Welcome to Torah Smash, the podcast for nerdy Jews, where our lives of Jewish learning collide with our love of nerd culture. In each episode, we discuss what we lovingly call a Torah Smash, which we have defined as a beautiful collision of one thing from the world of Judaism with another from nerd culture. I am Barak Malkin, and joining me today are...
Ethan Lane Miller.
RDY.
I have been wanting to do this topic for a while, and I kept pushing it off. But with the Pixar studio continuing to push out movies and announce upcoming sequels and unique properties, it is high time that we dive into the Pixar theory. Are you all familiar?
So have you been pushing this off or pushing it backwards? And we just don't realize what time we're in.
Yeah, I've been put both. It's sort of northwest of where it originated. Are you all familiar with the Pixar theory?
Is this the idea that everything is connected in the Pixar universe?
Yeah, and I think my comment alluded to the fact that I am.
Okay, great. So for Susan, the Pixar theory was created in 2012, 2013 by a man named John Negroni. At its base, it states...
Sounds like a refreshing cocktail.
Yeah. At its base, it states that all Pixar movies take place in the same universe. It started with a video from crack.com, mostly because of all the Easter eggs that can be found in each movie, referencing the other films. John took this even further and posits a theory that helps to explain how everything is in the same universe. And before we dive deeper into this fascinating theory, what do you think is the smash for today's episode?
Oh, man, I was hoping you would describe more for Susan so we could pull hints from the way you describe it.
It's more of that the mindset. That's why I just did the beginning piece. The idea that this is all has this bigger universe behind it. There's bigger.
Is this Kabbalah?
It's there's one of the things I found connecting this is in Kabbalah, but it's not Kabbalah as an essence. It's not the entirety of Kabbalah.
I mean, I could say something about how like you have Torah and Mishnah and all this other stuff that's all connected to one another, but that feels a little broad.
Yeah, that's too direct. So
all of Jewish text is in the same universe.
That's right. That's correct, but not what I'm talking about. RDY, you were the closest. So for today's episode, we'll explore not only the Pixar theory universe, which is fascinating, but also an idea in Judaism about how literal or interpretive Jewish texts can be. So I haven't found the firm source for this, but I have heard it in two different ways. One, as either something from Maimonides in his Guide for the Perplexed, but I also found it as a Kabbalistic theory called P.A.R.D.E.S. It's actually a Hebrew acronym. The letters of P.A.R.D.E.S represent four approaches to interpretation. P is Peshet, which means surface or the literal...
but actually, it's pay.
Pay. Oh, instead of P. Fine. The pay.
And it's pshat.
Pshat. Okay. Which means surface or the literal or direct meaning. Resh.
Simple. It means simple.
Simple. Okay. The resh, the R for adjacent.
Do you want me to explain part?
Is rem? I'll have you correct me the whole way through.
I'm kidding.
Remez.
You had the emphasis on the wrong syllable, but otherwise correct.
Translates roughly to hints or the hidden symbolic meaning beyond just the literal sense. The Dalet, D, is drash, which can be translated as inquire. So the comparative meaning as
explanation.
Explanation, which is the comparative meaning as one would get through similar occurrences. And I guess it'd be a sin. Is it a sin or shin?
It's a samech.
Yes to neither. Samech. Samech stands for sod, which can translate as secret, or the esoteric meaning as given through inspiration or revelation. So
now, can I also just jump in here because you have explained the letters in order of the word Pardes.
Yes,
the word means orchard, which implies like paradise and a way to get to the perfect world through text. Mm-hmm. But the way Pardes method is done switches the middle two letters.
Yes, right. It's not as like I'd say there's a spectrum of belief that you could have, right? So for instance, either Jonah actually was swallowed by a giant fish, or it's a story about redemption and forgiveness, right? And then in the middle of like, there's a comparative, like maybe there's a person named Jonah or like, or and there was a big fish and there was an issue in the ocean. Like there's pieces of it that exist, and then also perhaps there's just it's more of an analogy story comparing to something that existed, right? So there's a spectrum of belief that exists, and that's sort of where we're going to be exploring this idea of the Pixar theory through this lens of Jewish
Oh,
text and
cool.
interpretation, right? So either the Pixar universe is a compilation of movies that exist on their own. They are just films. You enjoy them one at a time. Or they are an entire universe that it needs to be explored deeply, right? The way that you look at the Pixar universe can be the spectrum of like, no, there's just Easter eggs, or like some explanation of this spectrum.
What's fun about using Pardes to explain this is that the last letter, Samech for Sod, implies that there's a lot of stuff out there that we're never going to figure out. Because once you explain the secret, it's no longer a secret. Therefore, other things become secret.
Yes.
Okay.
I also didn't realize that I was doing this, that Pardes also begins with P. So this is probably going to be the Pardes theory that we'll be exploring today.
Excellent.
So before we get sucked too deep into the thoughts on if the Pixar movies are standalone or one interconnected universe, let's start on the Jewish side. Where do each of you stand when it comes to Jewish texts? Are they literal, interpretive, somewhere in the middle?
I would say interpretive. I remember being fresh out of college and teaching, I think it was second grade religious school. We're talking about David and Goliath. And one of my kids asked, "So, did this really happen?" And it led to a wonderful conversation where I basically ended up being like, does it matter if it did or didn't?
That's a great follow-up. I like that.
I love that. Yeah, that anecdote is a perfect explanation of my whole theory of Torah, that we're dealing with truths, not facts. And if a person claims that the texts are literal and should be interpreted as literal, they are a fundamentalist.
I think I sit somewhere very far to the side of interpretation, but I also have that understanding that, right, even if this was given to us by God, it was written down by man. And so it's possible that, maybe the Torah should have like, the characters or events of this thing you're about to read do not hold any representation to anybody that we already know. Right. So who knows if there was man-made interpretation of the God story that we were supposedly given. But I lean heavily towards Jonah is about redemption and forgiveness, not that he was actually swallowed by a giant fish. That's why I said that.
Or that there was even a Jonah.
Or that there was even a Jonah. Yeah, right? That it's just a really great story to help us understand how to be the best people we can be, right? Which is hard because there are many stories that aren't great in terms of surface explanation. And it feels like cherry picking the things that we like to explain the things that we like and ignoring all of the bad stuff that people don't appreciate or vet. Like, I think in one of our episodes, we talked about Noah and the post part of the Noah story with his daughters, right? If you don't, this is a family podcast, so I'm not going to explain it. If you don't know, you can go look that up. That part, I don't know how to explain, right? So that's what I mean when we cherry pick the things that have good explanations and good reasons and say it's totally interpretive, and we're ignoring the things that aren't really as nice to talk about.
You even just cherry picked it in your explanation by saying, go look at it yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I don't want, yeah.
Sure. But I will also say that when I'm teaching Torah and explaining this interpretive nature of the text, one of the things that I like to say is that it differentiates itself from a history, because a history is about the past. It's a series of facts about the past if it's written correctly, whereas the Torah is about us today.
I like that. Okay, I was curious where we all sort of stood in that Pardes relationship to Jewish text. So let's explore the Pixar theory. Before I start, do each of you know the details of the Pixar theory?
I know some of them. I mean, I know enough to understand that like this thing from this movie appears in like the background of this movie, sort of thing.
Oh, okay. So not the entirety. How about you, RDY?
I would say I have familiarity with it, not knowledge of it.
Okay, great. So this will be for you and for Susan and for other people. So here's the Pixar theory.
So that basically encompasses everybody
here's
else,
for
right?
our audience who aren't familiar. It's definitely more than just the Easter eggs exist in every movie because they do. It sort of begins in Brave. Brave is really like a bookend of this theory, and it'll.
Sorry, I thought it began in The Good Dinosaur.
Mm, timeline wise, it can start there, only because The Good Dinosaur came after the Pixar theory came out. So
Oh.
all of the movies after 2012, 2013 have found their way into the timeline of the Pixar universe. But The Good Dinosaur doesn't hold any real great explanation. There do we can talk about it, but let me start on
So, and then
the
just to give, I know, a wide shot before we hone in.
yeah.
What was the most recent movie to 2012? Incredibles 2?
Oh, that's a great question. I don't think so. I think Incredibles 2 was much later.
It was. I watched it when I was at Green Family Camp.
I get so fuzzy between 2013 and COVID. So I, like the whole time with that I was in California kind of blurs together.
All right. In 2013 was Monsters University. So that was the last movie
Oh,
from the
okay.
original cut of all these pieces, which really lines up pretty closely to Monsters Inc. anyway, because as a just before prequel. That's where it sort of ends. Every movie after
Thank
that
you.
has found its way into the theory. So I'm going to start the theory at its base, which begins in Brave.
Okay.
So Merida discovers that there is magic that can solve her problems, but it ends up turning her mother into a bear, right? We find that this magic comes from this odd witch who is connected to the mysterious Will of the Wisps. And we don't just see animals behaving like humans, but there are inanimate objects like brooms behaving like people in the witch's shop. Centuries later, the animals from Brave that have been used in the witch's spells and experiments have interbred, creating a. Now we're out of the movie Brave, right? So post the movie Brave, centuries later, the animals from Brave that have been used in the witch's spells and experiments have interbred, creating a large-scale population of animals, slowly gaining personification and intelligence of their own. This idea of animals gaining sentience continues through Ratatouille, Finding Nemo, Finding Dory, and in a similar time frame, there's also a rise of technology and AI. Charles Muntz from Up, possibly learning that animals had thoughts and personalities, created the dog collars to be able to talk to animals. There then also becomes this, as I said, rise of AI starting in The Incredibles. Buddy, aka Syndrome, develops his AI killbot, and he also harnesses what he calls 0 point energy. The theory stipulates that AI develops over time through a company called By and Large. So
Oh.
Toy Story toys, which are powered by B&L batteries, have gained sentience, and it's made clear that sentient objects rely on humans for everything, even fulfillment and energy, right? In Toy Story 2, Wheezy's up on the top shelf and is like fading from his sort of personification existence because nobody's playing with him, or the toys that end up under the bed or in the closet like don't really exist in the same way anymore. I'm going to fast forward a bit from here. If you're interested in the full theory, just Google Pixar Theory and you'll find all the pages with more deeper pieces. Okay, so the Earth is polluted, right, from Wall-E. Machines take over via Wall-E and cars.
That seems like a big jump.
That is a big jump because the timeline, there's not a lot that occurs in that time space of sentience, right? We don't have movies that explore the Earth decaying or having issues of pollution. Wall-E gives us that backstory in Wall-E, so that's the big jump.
What about Toy Story? Where does that occur between like Up and Wall-E and The Incredibles?
After Up, so Up and Incredibles are right. Incredibles starts in like the 1960s sort of thing.
Sure.
Up has flashback movies of like what the 20s 30s, and so Up afterwards probably takes place closer to the 60s, right? This or 60s 70s, right? The latter part of it. So that's where that sort of takes place.
Sorry, but in Up, the kid has a GPS. Russell has a GPS in Up. So that would
So it
seem to
could
me to
be
clock
late
later.
80s, 90s, maybe. That's
Okay.
fine. That's a short span of this universe timeline, right? So
All right,
that's sort
sorry.
of argumentative, not argumentative, but like
What I'm hearing is that
negligent. It's
it's
negligent.
like the Torah, where
Okay, let me get back onto this before we deep. So then, over many years, there is growth and mutations, eventually leading to monsters, which are simply the personified animals mutated. They have an energy crisis, and with the help of machines, the monsters find a way to use doors to travel to the human world. Only it's not a different dimension, they are going back in time. So Boo saw everything take place on this future Earth where Kitty was able to talk, Sully. She became obsessed with finding her friend and wondered why animals in her time weren't quite as smart as the ones she had seen. She remembers that doors are the key to how she found Sully in the first place, becomes obsessed with this. She figures out that the wood in the doors holds the magic. So she becomes obsessed with that concept, finds a way to use that energy to time travel, and goes back to what she believes is the source, the will of the wisps, and eventually becomes the witch from Brave. So that's it in a nutshell. There's pages of pages of pages of this explaining all the different interconnectedness and where things fall in the timeline. You can ask me. I see RDY having lots of questions. I may or may not be able to answer all of them. But my second question is, are each of these movies just individual stories? Or is this actually one large Pixar universe?
I think yes and yes, because part of the fun of having a theory like this would be for people at Pixar to lean into it, give your clues or give your afikomen to allow the viewers to connect it to the theory. Like you don't even have to do the heavy lift there.
Yeah.
But my questions include things like, okay, I can see the connection between Brave and Sully.
Yeah.
Because bears are central and Sully is kind of a bear-like creature. And I suppose it could be argued that, the Steve Buscemi monster, I forget its name, was developed from a snake. But Mike Wazowski, help me out here. Because
you're looking for how all these mutations happened?
Yeah, like does he develop from a volleyball, which means that Tom Hanks movie is part of the universe?
I'm not a biologist. I am also not like a future disease expert.
Okay.
If we're saying post-polluted world, animals mutated, who knows what exists, right? We saw a huge, wide variety of animals that are like squid-like or octopus-like or animal-like in Monsters Inc. and Monsters University, right? So that's this again, theory, right? This is all theory. Doesn't have to be exact if we're having fun with this. So I can't answer which animal. I don't know. Let's think. What animal did Mike Wazowski evolve from?
From Wilson, the volleyball.
No, it's not. You think right? Perhaps in the future with polluted and all of these chemicals things, the volleyball gained sentience.
For sure. And
Yeah.
and I
I'd buy
think
that.
if we can
and the
text and midrash.
Yeah. Well, I think the Pixar theory would absolutely actually confirm that because Mike Wazowski maybe jokes about his lineage at the end of Monsters Inc. when he does the joke in the kids' room and he says, I loved playing on the playground. Like, of course, I was the ball, right? Perhaps.
I think that's a good point.
Yeah.
That is a good point.
Ethan, are these movies just movies or are they a universe?
I agree with RDY, but for the sake of giving you a separate answer, how about I just say and just commit to yes, they're all in the same universe.
Yeah. So Pixar has denied that there's one universe, but I think it's fun if it is true and they deny it, then people continue to find their explanations, and Pixar is now off the hook of explaining away everything that people have confusion about. I really like the theory. I think it's a lot of fun, and if you read through the long website that explains all of the things, and when people have questions, he's edited the page to explain away the things that people don't understand. I think it's really fun. I also think that there are Easter eggs completely separate from the theory. I think some of the Easter eggs make sense, and some of them put it in universe, right? When the kid in Finding Nemo reading an Incredibles comic, timeline-wise, that makes sense.
Also, like, let's go deeper into Pixar's denial. Because if you're talking about
we're like that meme with like all the The
Oh
Always
yeah,
Sunny meme.
let's go full
Yeah.
conspiracy theory on this. If all of these animals are mutating into sentient beings,
Mhm.
who is the director that is responsible for more Pixar films than most? Brad Bird.
Okay.
So there you go.
Okay.
Oh no, wait, no, it's Pete Docter. Never mind. I'm
Yeah.
totally wrong. Forget that whole thing.
Okay. And I think it's fun when the new movies come out when people will be like, okay, well, how does this one fit in? Right. So that answers your good dinosaur question before. By the way, one of the worst Pixar movies.
Haven't seen
Where,
it.
oh no.
No, I just knew it was part of the
Yeah.
theory.
It essentially just states because it's thousands and thousands of years ago, having the asteroid miss the Earth allows dinosaurs to exist and creates this sort of other personification of animals pre-brave. But otherwise,
So it allows millions of years of evolution of sentience.
correct.
Okay.
That was not destroyed by a meteor. And so that
something-
helps to explain some of because in Will and the Wisp, there are animals that have a bit of personification, which could be explained by the Will of the Wisp, could be explained by this evolution of the good dinosaur. Right. But there's an Easter egg that I think is more Easter egg than in theory, where in Inside Out, one of her memories is that weird looking dinosaur from the good dinosaur, but that absolutely can't be the same dinosaur because Inside Out takes place millions of years later. So that one to me is an Easter egg as opposed to Pixar Theory. Right.
Unless she's remembering being told about them in science class or something like that.
No, they're at like an amusement park. Do you know the scene I'm talking about in Inside Out?
I don't remember that
It's okay.
particular Afikoman.
It is a flashback to when she's at like a roadside attraction sort of thing.
Oh, yeah. Okay, I do
Yeah.
remember that was, and the car rolls away.
Yeah.
Okay, speaking of car rolling away,
Yeah.
where does Cars fit in?
In the machines after the humans leave Earth and they're on the spaceship for thousands and thousands of years. The machines, the AI from the machines with post Wall-E becomes cars, and there's this world with no people of just machine sentience. So cars and planes, which is Pixar adjacent, but not Pixar.
So why isn't the Cars world full of garbage that they have to drive around?
It's a great question. Here's my theory on that and there's probably an explanation on the page. I would say we saw a section of the Earth from Wall-E, right? A very populated area. And Cars exists in a sort of alternate America, right? But when they're in the desert in Route 66 kind of place, like there's not a ton of people in Route 66, right? As is the problem in Cars. And so it's possible, that area just doesn't have that much garbage because people didn't exist in that as much in that area. Or B, there are also machines like Wall-E who did take care of those areas and piled them somewhere else out of the realm of our camera's view.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll take it.
Yeah. Right. There's pieces of this that you've got to like explain away, and they're not all surface level, but I do find it fascinating.
I mean,
Hey, that's just like Torah.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. That's just like it's like Pardes. It's like this level of belief of like, if these things existed, you've got to like overly explain yourself. Like, and as RDY said, like perhaps the pure literal side maybe has problems explaining away some of those pieces. Perhaps, I don't know, or it's just all very nicely convenient, or the mostly interpretive has issues explaining away some of these pieces, right? Ethan?
Well, I was just gonna say, I think it's very easy in Torah and any pop culture thing to be like, oh well, this is happening just off screen.
Yeah, right. Midrash. Right. And Wall-E gives us a bunch of that midrash in their post credits. Post credits? No, it was like a short. Bernie, did you see when Wall-E enters the spaceship, a robot gets stuck outside, right?
Yes.
And so they create midrash about Bernie, this robot that takes care of pieces on the outside and follows him, not connected to the story, but affected by the storyline. And so I think that's what we're sort of talking about, why is there no garbage in Cars? We didn't get that storyline, but perhaps that exists somewhere. Any other questions on this? Yeah, sold?
Sure, I'll take it.
Yeah, it's a fascinating. I do really enjoy the explanation they've given for all of those. So then here's another question. If we accept the Pixar theory, there are other theories in pop culture around movies and TV shows that exist. So I will ask you all, are there other theories like this either pop culture or Jewish text that you enjoy.
I don't know that I really have a theory. I mean, my favorite things are things that are very clearly connected to other things, like the Star Trek and Star Wars universes, I would say.
Whoa, hold on. Are you saying Star Trek and Star Wars are connected?
Oh, Barack, are you ready for this?
Oh, here we go.
Yes, so this is definitely. I don't know. I don't know if I believe in conspiracy theories, but like obviously when things like Star Wars and Star Trek are connected,
Right.
that's hysterical to me. Go ahead, explain that.
Okay, so what I initially was saying was that Star Trek is its own universe and Star Wars is its own universe, but they are actually connected.
I don't know how.
Okay, so for 40th anniversary of the original trilogy, there were books released called From a Certain Point of View. And these books recounted they followed along the timeline of the original trilogy of movies, but each scene, each segment showcased something from another point of view, hence a certain point of view.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
And the final chapter in each book is about the Wills, who are these kind of not necessarily like clearly defined observers who have been documenting what's been going on in the universe. And here's an excerpt from page 545 from The Wills Strike Back, which is the final chapter of the From a Certain Point of View, The Empire Strikes Back. Evading the dreaded Imperial Starfleet. Wait, Starfleet? Did you just say Starfleet? Are Kirk and Spock going to show up next? I don't even know what Kirk and Spock are. There's a big surprise. Do you know anything? Yes, I do. That's why the Wills asked me to write this. So if you don't mind, and then it goes on. So Starfleet, Kirk, and Spock are mentioned in a Star Wars book.
We can that. I don't know if that is like boom proven. I don't think I believe that yet. You could say like,
you know what? You're right. It's the other Kirk and Spock.
The fact that Star Wars is a long time ago and Star Trek is the future, right? You can say that both of them technically live adjacent to our universe in that sense, right? Because Star Trek definitely is meant to be our universe, and Star Wars seemingly could be because it's the universe similarly. But I don't know
if the witch in Brave is Boo from Monsters Inc., then we could find a time loop in Star Wars and Star Trek too, I'm sure.
We, especially with the fact that the Star Wars characters, some of them either live very long or can reincarnate themselves as spirits, right?
Well, I will also say Star Trek and Star Wars have begun taking divergent paths of storytelling and multiverses.
Yeah.
So Star Wars has of late been very keen to like CGI de-age people, whereas Star Trek has been very keen to just recast people. And so, if you take things literally, we've now had 3 different actors who play Kirk. Is this really the same Kirk, or are these different multiverse versions of Kirk?
Right. And Star Trek battled that on its own because its first episode, the pilot with Captain Pike, they reused that episode late in season 1 or beginning of season 2, where they recut that episode and utilized it for a different storyline. So it changed that perspective already. So, okay. I like the theory. I like this star theory. I don't know if I believe it. RDY, do you have any theories that you like?
I couldn't find anything about specific shows. I did see one that said Sheldon is Spock, but I think that's just a way to say these are 2 people who are not very emotionless and very smart. And I think in Spock's world, he's a Vulcan, and in Sheldon's world, he's autistic.
Sure. I have 3 that I like that I don't have all of the details, but they're fun and fascinating. One is, oftentimes there's a lot of theories that like, these actor, all of their movies are linked together, right? It's actually the same person. So there's a really fun one that the dad from Malcolm in the Middle is Walter White from Breaking Bad. And there's different theories that place them in opposite orders based on the timing of it, that either he's in witness protection as Malcolm's dad, or Malcolm's dad eventually becomes Walter White. I think it makes sense that he changes his name to become the dad and changes his name, but the order of the timeline doesn't work that way.
That's a funny one.
Yeah. There's another one that says Kevin McAllister from Home Alone grows up to be Jigsaw
Oh my
from
god.
from the Saw theories, from the Saw movies. And then
That's horrifying and
Yeah.
yet totally makes sense.
yeah, and I have not seen all this. I have not seen the Saw movies, so I cannot speak to that one. But then there's another Disney adjacent one that I think many people have heard that connect Frozen, Tangled, The Little Mermaid, and Tarzan.
I've heard of this one.
Yeah, and so Ethan doesn't look like he's heard about it. Is that correct?
Correct.
Yeah. So essentially, the parents in Frozen in the first movie, their ship goes under in a storm. So the theory there, based on their location, is that their ship is the ship from the Little Mermaid that she's exploring underwater
Mm.
because of where it sank. Tangled is connected because she shows up at the Frozen wedding at the end of the movie with her hair cut short. And so their families could be friends, sort of thing. The Tarzan one ends up getting disproven in Frozen 2 because the theory was that the parents from Frozen, when their ship crashed, they washed up on an island and had a boy who grew up to become Tarzan. And so they're essentially cousins to Tarzan, is where that sort of or siblings to Tarzan. Anyway, so those are the fun ones. That's like the main stuff I have on the Pixar theory. But can I ask you guys, do you have a favorite Pixar movie?
Yes, but can I propose a connection among movies?
Yeah, go ahead.
Joe versus the volcano,
Yeah.
When Harry Met Sally, and You've Got Mail. All
Okay.
feature Tom Hanks and Meg Ryan in romantic roles with each other.
Right.
So here's the theory, and
Yeah.
I'm making it up as I go.
Go ahead.
That in Joe versus the volcano, these two destined souls find each
Sure.
other, and then they get separated and they both develop amnesia until they become friends connected through their best friends, Bruno Kirby and Marge Simpson. And they get back together in When Harry Met Sally, again separate and find each other in You Got Mail. And this is all perhaps connected together through the world of Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, when perhaps they gave each other amnesia intentionally to forget each other, but you cannot break them apart.
Oh, one of those like destined to like Hancock with Will Smith, where those
There you
people
go.
always
There
found
you
each
go.
other, but
Yes,
they forgot that they
yes.
did. Yeah.
Love
That's
it.
fun. That's fun. Yeah. All right. So do you have a favorite Pixar movie?
It is very hard for me to choose between Inside Out and The Incredibles.
Yeah, right? I think I would be betraying my superhero love if I didn't say The Incredibles in my list. Toy Story has a soft spot for me because I feel like that was the first.
Yeah.
And I'm there with Ethan. Inside Out is incredible.
Yeah. So Incredibles is definitely was my top favorite for a very long time. And then I think Onward became my favorite. I haven't seen it as many times now as Incredibles because Incredibles has been out for much longer. But I really enjoyed that exploration of this D&D world personified. Yeah.
I've only seen that once, but I did like it. Where is Onward in the timeline?
I was afraid you were going to ask that when I mentioned this.
Are they turning into monsters? They're like mid-process of turning into monsters? Because you've got like humans and elves and other...
Yeah, perhaps this says the Pixar theory states that the elves and other anthropomorphic creatures serve as a missing link between the sparsely populated Earth and the monsters in Monsters, Inc.
Okay.
John, the person who created this theory, explained two ways that would happen. The first is that elves evolved from the humans who returned to Earth after Wall-E and used emotions as magic, but went extinct after losing the magic, leading other species to evolve into monsters. The second is very simple. Humans evolved into elves and then into monsters.
Oh, which was the one I posited.
Yeah.
The simple one. I'm
Yeah.
so glad I was able to figure
Yeah.
out the simple one.
Yeah,
Pixar Theory is really stretching thousands upon thousands upon thousands of years.
Yes,
Sure.
indeed. Which is like sometimes difficult to like really step back and be like, this is not. I'd say millions of years for evolution purposes and such.
And then like A Bug's Life is kind of obvious because it's sentient animals.
Yeah, and that's I believe that lives post Wall-E also because it's one of the few movies that also does not have any humans in it. And
well, and the thing about Bug's Life and even the Nemo movies, even though Nemo does have humans in it, they both happen under the surface, so they could be happening at any point in the timeline.
Yeah, that's true. There's also
But they spend a little time out of the water in Sydney, Australia.
there's also some right the tree from A Bug's Life has shown up in other films as like in background pieces. And there is a piece of this theory that sort of posits that the tree that grows from the boot, this thing that is sort of survived and existed, eventually becomes this big tree for the Bug's Life, and also is the tree that Boo uses to collect the magic wood from if this had all of this special energy around it from these other pieces. I will say I wanted to thank you guys for not claiming other Disney or DreamWorks movies as Pixar, because I'm definitely a Pixar purist and will correct people if they state, yeah, well, my favorite Pixar movie is Kung Fu Panda, right? When stuff like that happens, right, the like hairs on the back of my neck stand up.
When you started talking about the development into animals, sentient and all that stuff,
Yeah.
I had to remind myself that Brother Bear is not part of the
Yeah, just the Disney
Pixar universe.
That's part of the Disney animation studios, not the Pixar studios. So I think that when people are listening to this and thinking about those other favorite Disney animated movies, not all Disney animated movies are Pixar. So I think they just live within their universe. So to wrap up, I don't know if all of these theories are true.
All stories are true. You just don't know if they're facts.
Right. But if we did know, then they wouldn't be theories. Right? As you just said. But as proof of this podcast, I do really love when different things come together to create something wonderful. So I, for one, will continue to look for hidden meaning. It creates fun opportunities for discussion. Plus, Jews look for unknown connections all the time in the real world, trying to find connections when they may not exist. We just call it Jewish geography.
Love it.
Well, that'll do it for this episode of Torah Smash. Our fiscal sponsor is Jewish Creativity International. Our theme music was created by Sean Fogel. You can check out Sean's bands and studio work at www.thesleepywest.com. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to rate and review us wherever you listen. It helps others find us and is an excellent way to support the podcast. We want to hear from you and continue today's nerdy discussion. Go to torahsmash.com to find where to connect with us online, purchase swag from our store, support us with a donation, find previous episodes, and more. And to paraphrase Toy Story, this podcast isn't complaining. It's kvetching with style. Welcome to Torah Smash, our podcast for our podcast.
Our podcast.
It is.
It is our podcast.
I wasn't looking.
But it's everyone's podcast.
Podcast for the people, by the people, for the people.
We're going to take the podcast from the 1%.
Yeah.
Give it the 99%.
So Merida, I didn't need to do the rolling R.
Don't stick your head in my drink.